And then the other thing, I think manage expectations. I live here, so I can go out all the time. And I have to tell you, there are times I go back 4, 5, a dozen times until I get kind of the shot that I have in my mind. You may not get that perfect shot the first time you go out. It takes some persistence and some dedication to go out to, same spot 4, 5, 6 times to get the shot you want. But when you do, it's definitely worth it.
Welcome to the Big Photo Hunt Podcast, a show where we talk with aspiring and professional photographers to help us all grow and improve our photography together. I'm your host, Ken Deckinger. If you're one of our community members and you'd like to be a guest on the show, please visit bigphotohunt.com for more information. Hey, big photo hunters. I think we need a new jingle. This one is cool, but it's kind of smooth jazzy. I've got a big personality. I know this. So I thought a smooth jazz jingle might help balance me out a little bit, but I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. Let me know what you think. Maybe something a bit more fun. I feel like we should be dancing by the time the jingle ends. Anyway, my guest today is Betty Wiley. Betty is a Cape Cod photographer who specializes in landscape and nature photography, primarily coastlines, seasides, and lighthouses. And she does it brilliantly. Her work can be seen in magazines throughout the region, including Cape Cod Magazine, Chatham Living Magazine, Falmouth Living, and South Shore Living. Those are all the big ones. For those of you unfamiliar with Cape Cod, it is a peninsula off the coast of Massachusetts, about 70 miles southeast of Boston. If you look at a map, it's the thing that looks like an arm flexing a muscle off the northeast coast of the United States. One of the things about Cape Cod is that it is summer. Beaches, sand dunes, lighthouses, seafood, most of it fried, which makes it delicious, but not the best for you, but delicious. So today with Betty, who happens to be one of the nicest photographers you'll meet, we're going to talk about the Cape. We're going to talk about some of her favorite locations to shoot on the Cape, and we're going to talk about tips to benefit your seaside photography this summer. Whether it's Cape Cod, Long Island, the Outer Banks in North Carolina, or any similar summer-type destination around the world, what we talk about today will definitely apply. Oh, and for me, I love this episode because I spend my summers on the Cape, and so I'm jumping out of my seat excited to learn from Betty. Here, wait, I'm going to start record here.
Okay. I'll behave myself.
No, don't behave yourself.
No, okay.
I haven't behaved myself once, and so far people still listen, so there's no behavior allowed.
All right.
I think the best place to start is to tell everybody who you are. Who's Betty Wiley?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada. Went to school there, went to college there, and lived all my life, early years in Las Vegas. We lived in Texas, we lived in Florida, even in California, but we've been up in New England for 22 years, I think. So I consider myself now a New Englander. I was originally in biotech, but I've always been a photographer. My uncle was a photographer and my mother was a photographer. My uncle was semi-professional, but my mom was more of a hobbyist. So some of my earliest memories are with a camera in my hand. Like we would go out into the desert, just kind of explore. And I look back in pictures that, I have when I was growing up as a young girl, like 7 or 8 years old. And I had cameras in my hand. I always remember having a camera. So when we moved to New England, my husband gave me a digital camera. And they were terrible back then. It was like 1997. I remember he bought me a Casio, digital camera. And I was so excited because I just thought, wow, this is really cool. You don't have to go out and buy film. But lo and behold, back then, they weren't even a megapixel. The image quality was absolutely terrible. And I remember uploading images and looking at the computer. I was just so disheartened. They just looked terrible, but I knew where it was going. And so I started learning Photoshop back in 1997, 98, because I knew it was going to get huge. And sure enough, every year I would get a new digital camera with more megapixels. And here I am, not only shooting digital camera, but I'm now using solely mirrorless cameras in my photography. And yeah, I've just been kind of growing with it.
Isn't it ironic that there's a trend now to go back to film?
It is, and I've thought about it, but I don't know. I just love the digital technology so much. I love the editing process, which I'm happy to talk a bit more about. But I really like that aspect of it. I love the editing almost as much as I love being out. And I wouldn't necessarily want to give that up. I really enjoy the digital darkroom.
Can you tell people listening to this podcast who aren't familiar with Cape Cod what it is?
Oh, God, what isn't it? Of course, the beaches are beautiful. And so many people come down just for the beaches. And I think they're amazed to see the diversity of the landscape and seascape, I guess, if you will. I mean, we're surrounded on three sides by water. So obviously we have a lot of beaches and there's a lot of water, but we have wonderful lighthouses. I mean, we have a lot of lighthouses on the Cape. I think one of my favorite aspects of living on the Cape would be the salt marshes, because they are amazing in the fall. You can go up to Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine and get beautiful color up here. But what people fail to realize, the salt marshes in the fall turn this beautiful kind of gold green color. And when the light hits the marsh grass, it looks like somebody took a match and lit the grass. It's just on fire. It's just beautiful. So we have, lots of salt marshes, which are really interesting, their own little ecosystem. Also, we have sand dunes, whale watching, if you're into wildlife on the Cape. Birding is huge here, a lot of birders on the Cape. Interesting terrain where, like, if you went up to Provincetown, which is at the very tip of Cape Cod, it would look totally different than where I live. Each little town here on the Cape kind of has its own unique kind of character. One of the favorite places people like to go would be Chatham. And Chatham is unique. We have some beautiful homes.
Hey, it's Ken. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Big Photo Hunt podcast. I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Betty. I wanted to take a moment here to make sure that you've seen the Big Photo Hunt online. As an amateur photographer, I've been focused on improving my photography skills, and the best way for me to do that is to be with other photographers who are in the same boat as I am. We're able to share our photos, get inspiration from peers, and just be part of the bigger picture, pun not intended, as a group of aspiring photographers. It's what helps me grow as a photographer, so that's why I built it for us. Check it out and let me know what you think. It's at bigphotohunt.com. Now, back to the show.
A working fish pier, which is really interesting. You see the boats come in with their catch and the seals coming in following the boats. And it's really interesting to see all of that. It seems to be everyone's favorite place on the Cape, especially if you have deep pockets, I should say. And then there's Provincetown. Interesting history. It was a Portuguese fishing community, beautiful sand dunes, a couple of beautiful lighthouses, actually more than that, 3 beautiful lighthouses that I can think of right off the top of my head. Marshes, as I mentioned before, really interesting harbor and fishing dock. Every town, like I said, has its own unique character.
So I should know this, but I didn't know this until today. There are 15 towns on Cape Cod.
It's spread out. So if I go to Falmouth, even though I'm still on the Cape, it takes me a good 45 to 50 minutes to get to Falmouth. Another beautiful lighthouse there. I love Falmouth. And one of the things about Falmouth that's appealing is that it's where you can catch the ferry to go over to the vineyards, like super close. So if you're in Falmouth and you want to take a day trip to Martha's Vineyard, it's really easy to do.
We've done day trips out to Nantucket. We'll go out there in the
Oh,
morning,
sure.
take the
Yeah,
fast ferry out of Hyannis, and just we're back by 8 p.m.
absolutely. Yeah. That's something that always amazes me, although the ferry gets so booked up in the summer, as you might expect. But, really, I can be on Nantucket in 2 hours, less than 2 hours, an hour and a half at the most by the time I go into Hyannis and park my car. I mean, it's an hour away from me, as you said, with the high speed ferry, and you can go over there and do a day trip really easily and then come back the same day. And Martha's Vineyard, same thing. It's about, if you went from Falmouth, it's maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, very easy to get to. So you have a lot here. And, when people come to the Cape, often they'll come 3 or 4 days. And while that's great, if you're here for a week or 2 weeks, there's just so much on the Cape that you can see.
For our listeners, the best way to explain Cape Cod is it's a place where you put shorts on and flip-flops and you don't take them off until the fall. You don't need to wear shoes. A lot of times I actually don't wear anything.
Yeah.
And it's just your car gets sandy and that's just the summer. And it's a really delightful place because it is so chill and just very beachy.
This is a vacation area. In the summer, you kind of, shorts are acceptable almost everywhere. Might be a few places you wouldn't want in shorts to have dinner, maybe Chatham Bars Inn or a place like that. But for the most part, it's casual down here.
So the way I came onto your work was through our now mutual friend, Ben Williamson, who I had on this podcast. I want to play for you the moment Ben suggested that I reach out to you.
So you must know of Betty Wiley out there on the Cape.
No. Is that a photographer?
Betty Wiley's a wonderful photographer that you need to look up.
Yeah. It's just
you should have her on the podcast.
I will definitely look her up now. It's just my naivete. And also, photography came to me about 4 years ago or so. And so I'm still learning and following people. And it's ironic, despite having a house out there, it's not my favorite place to shoot. I prefer Maine. I prefer different scenes, and I love street photography. There's some things out there. I've gone out to P-Town, actually in winter and done some shooting, and it's pretty cool because there's not a lot of people out there, and the people that are there are very chill, and they are usually great subjects because they're just cool people. And so I like it. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But back to the climate change concern.
Oh, my gosh.
So that's the first time I had heard of you, and like I said when I spoke to Ben, it was just my naivete because your work is gorgeous. But once I saw that, I really wanted to reach out to you to have you on this podcast because I think that our listeners could learn so much from you. But also, it's very personal because, as I mentioned to Ben, I do spend my summers out in Cape Cod, and I have not been inspired. And it's not because of Cape Cod. It's because I've been a little bored with it. Then I saw your photos, I got inspired, and I got unboard.
Oh, my word.
I am
Unboard. I love it.
I am completely unboard now and so looking forward to the summer to get out there and shoot, all because of your work. And so I just wanted you to know that. And I also wanted to brag about your photos because I think they're so beautiful and they're so powerful that they had an impact on me. So I want you to know that.
Oh, well, thank you for that. You'll have to come shooting. Give me a call.
I will. Do you think that Cape Cod came to you or you came to Cape Cod? Meaning, did you go out there to photograph and that's what drew you to it? Or
No, that's interesting. You should ask. It's the first time I actually have ever been asked that question. Actually, I didn't. Even though I came down to the Cape quite a bit, my husband and I used to come down to play golf. And it wasn't until I became more familiar with the Cape that I realized how much the Cape had to offer for photography. And it suits my style of photography really well because I really don't do a lot of people. I know you mentioned street photography. It's something I've never really gravitated to. I love it when I see street photography when it's done well, but I've never gravitated to it. I've been mostly a landscape, seascape kind of gal. So when I started exploring the Cape with my camera, I really had no idea that there was so much here to photograph and how diversified it was. I was always thinking like, oh, you go up to Vermont for fall color. And then lo and behold, I found out that I realized here on the Cape, the marshes are absolutely gorgeous in the fall. And now, we're approaching early summer, and spring is beautiful. Late spring, early summer is beautiful with the beach roses and flowering beach plums. And even some places have some gorgeous lupin. So there's just so much here that the seasons offer that I had no idea about until I lived here and started exploring, full time pretty much.
What are some of your favorite locations to shoot out there? For example, in like your photos, I see some of the beautiful water shots. I see some of the beautiful lighthouses, the beach shots, the bluffs. Where is all this?
Oh my.
I know it's there, but I can never find it.
It is. It is. But part of it, it's because I live here, Ken. So I have learned the best places to go. And that's something that, I'll digress just a little bit. People have to come here on vacation for 3 or 4 days or even a week, and they leave disappointed, partly because they're just not, I live here full time. I have the ability, if I don't get the shot that I want at first, or even the second time or third time, I can go multiple times to get exactly what I'm after, the perfect light, the perfect composition, whatever. So, I have that luxury where people are just coming here for a few days don't have. And I've learned over the years, like for instance, one of my personal favorites, and I've lived close by, like I said before, I could walk to Gray's Beach, and I love to go to Gray's Beach. And I know, for instance, sometimes the best time of year to go would be really, I think from now through late fall. Beautiful, when the marsh grasses are starting to become green, and then in the fall as they turn color. It's a favorite spot of mine. I go all the time. I'm not kidding. I probably have thousands of images of Gray's Beach that I've taken over the years. Another favorite spot, I love Falmouth. I love Nopska Lighthouse, which has recently been renovated. It's in probably one of the prettiest settings, I think, for a lighthouse here on the Cape. And that it's set up on a hill. The road kind of winds around the lighthouse. And of course, you have the beautiful ocean, in the background if you're photographing at sunrise. That's definitely a favorite spot. In the fall, again, Provincetown is a favorite of mine because I often use a longer lens, and I photograph over at Wood End Lighthouse, and I've got the beautiful fall color in the marsh grass in the foreground. I love Provincetown anyway. Beautiful beaches there. Race Point Lighthouse, which if you have the energy, you can actually take a trail and walk out there. Nauset Lighthouse always comes to mind. That's the Cape Cod potato chip lighthouse, the red and white one. Everybody seems to love that lighthouse, and I like it as well. My favorite time to go there would probably be in the fall. Old Harbor Life Saving Station, I like a lot. It's an old life saving station, which is now turned into a museum. So they have some of the life saving boats that they use to rescue people that were, shipwrecked off the coast. It's a pretty spot. I love Provincetown Harbor, though, with all the fishing boats coming and going. It's a big harbor. And depending on kind of where you orient yourself, if you're on McMillan Wharf, which is the big wharf there with the fishing vessels, if you look to the right, there's a very famous landmark called the Portuguese Fishermen's Wives Memorial. And it has the faces of women, Portuguese women, painted on the side of this memorial, because, they were fishing widows for the most part. Their husbands were always going out to sea to catch fish and make a living. And of course, no doubt, I'm sure some lives were lost, but they erected this memorial, which is really picturesque. Although now they've put in boat slips around it. So it's detracted from it somewhat, but still an interesting landmark. And it's such a beautiful spot. I could literally spend hours on McMillan Moor photographing the fishing vessels. If it's calm, of course, you get great reflections. The boats are really interesting. There's some really large boats. And then you have this beautiful skyline. If you look back toward Provincetown, you've got the beautiful library, which is also a landmark.
What's the best time of day to go out there to catch the fishing boats?
I will say this, my son is actually a charter boat captain. He's a fisherman, has been all his life. And I will tell you that oftentimes they want to be at their fishing spot at first light. So sometimes that means getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Ouch.
and heading out. Yeah, even before sunrise, but actually in the morning, early in the morning, even at a little bit before sunrise, you'll hear the boats starting up, and they're doing what they need to do, and they're taking off. So you'll find a lot of activity right around sunrise. Another good place for that is actually in Chatham. There's a fish pier in Chatham. It's a working fish pier. And the fish that are brought into the fish pier in Chatham are shipped all over the world. And in the morning, it can be interesting because just like Provincetown, they're getting their boats ready to go out. And then they come in at staggered times during the day. And sometimes that time would be like maybe even 11 o'clock in the morning to 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Well, a bit later, it's usually not quite as active. So usually early afternoon, I would say, is probably a really good time to catch them. And what's really interesting are all the seals that are swimming around because, of course, they're looking for a handout. They're like dogs. They want to be fed.
Yeah.
So, they're circling around. You've got the gulls, flying around. It's like a feeding frenzy. So there can be a lot of activity in the early afternoon. If I were to say probably 1 or 2, probably the best time.
As far as lighting goes, do you try to get there in the morning sometimes to get more color
Oh, I do,
out of it?
but I often go for sunrise, especially if it's calm. And if you were to photograph sunrise there, having calm water, makes such a difference because you have nice reflections. That to me is the best time if you have calm conditions and you can get the sun coming up and you get the reflections of the boats. It's just a wonderful spot to be at sunrise. And it's not so much a sunset location. That's mainly a sunrise location.
That's awesome information. I'm going to do that. I've been wanting to go there, but I haven't known what time to go.
Oh, you have to. And I should mention while I'm talking about Chatham in July just goes crazy because we have a hydrangea festival. It's kind of like the unofficial flower of the Cape. And it's so big that they have a big hydrangea festival all over the Cape, but particularly in Chatham. There's some well-known spots along Shore Road, which is the road that goes past Chatham Bars Inn, past the fish pier. There's this beautiful home that's on the right-hand side, and everybody photographs it. It's known as the Hydrangea Walk. It's this big white mansion that sits way back from the road. And there's a red sidewalk or red walkway that goes up to the house, and it's flanked on both sides by hydrangeas. And it's beautiful. Everybody stops and photographs that spot. I was actually lucky enough to photograph that house, their garden, for Chatham Magazine a number of years ago. It stops people in their tracks. They just can't believe how beautiful it is. Mark your calendar early around July 4th. From, I would say July 4th, probably for 2 weeks after that, the hydrangeas are in bloom all over the Cape. But beautiful in Chatham. There are a lot of homes that have hydrangeas growing in their front yards, and it's very picturesque. It's very pretty.
This is awesome. I've got so many places now to go. Thank you.
Yeah, and Chatham Bars Inn is another place. Beautiful hydrangea display. They have hydrangeas planted all over the property. So people just go crazy over hydrangeas. In fact, so much so that CBS Sunday Morning, and this was maybe about 3 years ago, actually did a feature story on hydrangeas in Chatham.
Hey there, it's Ken. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Big Photo Hunt podcast. I'm really happy you're here. I wanted to just punch in and tell you about the Big Photo Hunt in case you weren't yet a member. We're building the world's most friendly online photography community, and it's pretty friendly. Not to mention, it's the best place for amateur photographers to grow by sharing photos and being inspired by other members. Members post only one photo a week. Then the community upvotes their favorite photos. At the end of each week, we celebrate the most upvoted photos. It's really fun. So if you're not yet a member, check it out, bigphotohunt.com, and reach out to me if I can answer any questions. I'm around. Now back to the show. I've seen them. They're gorgeous. I mean, they're gorgeous all over the Cape, but in Chatham, they're absolutely beautiful.
And, something I didn't mention, our night photography, our Milky Way photography is really good. It's very, very dark here. Places like, in Truro, it's very, very dark and great spot for Milky Way photography from really March through October.
That's great information. I've noticed how dark it is, and I just haven't wanted to go
Yeah.
outside and sit outside at nighttime. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And you asked, about favorite spots. Highland Light would definitely have to be on that list. It's a beautiful lighthouse. It's great for Milky Way. It's a different composition depending upon the time of year you're photographing the Milky Way. In September, October, the Milky Way is almost straight up. And you can compose your shot with the Milky Way, the lighthouse, with the Milky Way kind of coming out of the top. It's really kind of a fun thing to do.
I would love to know, like, if you were to leave 3 tips with people who were interested in coastline photography, the kind of stuff that we see around Cape Cod, what would those be? What makes your photos so amazing, other than Betty Wiley, who they can't take with them?
No. Well, knowing when and where to go. So, for instance, look at other people's images and don't hesitate. If you have questions about a location, a lot of photographers are willing to answer questions. Learn as much about the location as you possibly can. And of course, having the right weather conditions. For instance, I typically know here on the Cape, if I want to photograph boats, I know that I want a calm morning. I usually like to go at morning before the wind kicks up in the afternoon. So if I want to photograph boats, I'm going to go in the morning when it's very calm so I can get the reflections of the boat and, nice smooth water, which I like a lot. I also know after a storm, if it's been raining all day, I typically know it's likely to be a good sunset if it's a trend toward clearing at the end of the day. I would say, learn how to use different photo apps. One of the things I live by here on the Cape is a tide app, which I use Tidegraph, but there are many out there. So I learn the tides. And then the other thing, I think manage expectations. I live here, so I can go out all the time. And I have to tell you, there are times I go back 4, 5, a dozen times until I get kind of the shot that I have in my mind. You may not get that perfect shot the first time you go out. It takes some persistence and some dedication to go out to, same spot 4, 5, 6 times to get the shot you want. But when you do, it's definitely worth it.
So I have 3 questions that I ask all of my guests at the end of every episode.
Okay.
The first question is, what's your favorite genre to shoot and why?
Well, I would say it's landscapes. And by that, I mean either on land or like over the water. That's my favorite genre. Now, I do photograph for the magazines. So, of course, I photograph people at times and so on. But the main scale, what really, makes my heart sing are photographing beautiful landscapes. And we have so many here on the Cape. Also, drone photography. I love having a drone and having that different vantage point that allows me to get a different composition, or a different perspective than I can get with my camera.
Question number 2 is, what camera system do you use?
Oh, I use Canon. I've used Canon for as long as I can remember, even before I went digital. So I'm fully invested in Canon. Even if I wanted to switch, it'd be really difficult because of all the gear I have. I have used other camera systems. I've made some forays into Fuji. I just wanted lightweight cameras just to kind of go out where I'm not, carrying a lot of weight. I love Fuji, but, we're having 2 camera bodies where I might have a Fuji over one arm and my Canon on the other just doesn't work. So I just shoot with one camera system. And it's Canon and it has been for a long time.
And question number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, how often do you get that burning itch to just get out there and shoot?
If the weather's good, every day.
That's a 10.
Yeah,
I
would say.
You may be my first 10.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of 9s, but can I call that a 10?
No. Yeah, you can. You can. I can't imagine life without a camera and going out. I just can't. It's just, it's what I do. I kind of see the world that way. I see the world in terms of not only composition, but light and color. So whenever time permits, if I can go out, I'm out. Our weather here is very unpredictable. And everybody says that, oh, the weather is never right. Here on the Cape, it's particularly so. So often I'm out regardless. And I have to tell you, so many times when I've gone out, despite what my apps are telling me, I've come home with a great sunset or a sunrise. So if the weather's even halfway decent, I even think there's a chance I'm out. Yeah.
I think I need
I'm a
to.
diehard. I am a diehard.
I need to send you a trophy or something. I think you may be the first 10. Actually, that's not true. We may have had another 10, but you're borderline 11.
I have a friend of mine. I might be. And you know who it is? So I have a very good friend that I photograph with. And if you haven't reached out to him, you probably should. He's also friends with Ben, and that is Michael Blanchett. Do you know that name at all?
I don't know.
If I'm a 10, he would be a 20.
Hold on a second.
Michael Blanchett. He's photographing in Oregon right now.
Blanchett. E-T-T at the end? Oh, Blanchett Photos.
Yep. E-T-T.
All right. I'm looking him up. Oh, he's got great stuff.
Oh, he does have great stuff. I photographed with him a lot.
That's cool.
In fact, I went to Iceland this year with Mike and a couple of other friends. We went on our own, and the year before that to Lofoten. In fact, I'm expecting him to come down to the Cape next week. So we do a lot of photography together. But like I said, if I'm a 10 or 11, he's a 20.
All right. I've never had someone really breach the 10 mark on this. So if he's a 20, he may get the trophy.
He might get the trophy, and it will be well-deserved if he does.
You just gave it away. You may have just given it away.
A lot.
It would have been yours, but you're basically giving it to suggesting someone else take your award.
Yep.
All right. Well, Betty, where can people find you online? What is your Instagram?
Oh, so my Instagram is Betty Wiley Photo, and W-I-L-E-Y, so Betty Wiley Photo. Also on my website is BettyWileyPhotography.com.
Please go check out Betty's Instagram and her website. You'll see the real beauty of Cape Cod, and Betty captures it better than anyone I've seen. Betty, it's such an honor to talk to you.
Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed talking to you, and please let me know when you're available, and we'll go out and we'll do a little shooting.
Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Our next show will feature more valuable stories from our community members. If you'd like to audition to be a guest, please visit bigphotohunt.com for more information. Thanks again for listening today.